The Invisible Man was directed by Leigh Whannell and stars Elizabeth Moss as a woman who has recently left her abusive boyfriend, who responds to this by committing suicide, and she later receives a large fortune in his will. And for a while, things seem to be okay for her until an invisible force starts tormenting her both physically and psychologically. She and begins to suspect that her boyfriend is behind all of this. And of course, I mean, when you say shit like that, of course, nobody is going to believe her. So, what is she going to do? Well, I do not want to spoil the movie. What I can tell you is, I thought this movie was great. And it's by far the best movie I've seen so far this year. If you watched my my review for the original Invisible Man film that came out back in the 30s, you know how much I love that movie. It's one of the few movies that are important to me since it's part of the Universal monster movies. Um, as for what I originally thought of this movie, I originally thought I was going to hate it at first because I'm not really fond of remakes. So my expectations at first were a bit low until I saw that the Rotten Tomato score was really high. So I walked into the theater with my fingers crossed. And when I walked out of the theater, I was like, this was great. I am satisfied. Oh, I was so happy they did not screw this up. Oh. So this is easily the best movie I've seen so far this year. Elizabeth Moss' performance, she is amazing in this role. She plays this woman who has gone through some shits. I mean, she has recently left her abusive boyfriend. Her boyfriend was a controlling piece of shit. I mean, you could tell like throughout the movie that before he starts seriously tormenting her by becoming invisible, that he was an asshole from the get-go. So yeah, and it's kind of you root for her throughout the entire film because of the things that she's been going through and what she's going through now. And throughout all of this, when she's saying that she's being tormented by this invisible force, of course, nobody's going to believe her and they'll believe that she's going completely insane. But of course, as the audience, we know that she's not insane. And as for the technique that they use for the Invisible Man, instead of using a drug that makes him invisible, instead it involves technology, and I'm perfectly okay with this because I'm glad that they went with a different direction for how they choose to make the character invisible because we're all familiar with the story by now because you have a scientist who develops a drug that makes him invisible, and but when it comes to this version of the Invisible Man, he has this suit with like tiny cameras that somehow it makes you invisible. I do not know how that shit works, but who cares? It's awesome anyway. But I'm glad that they went with a different approach for this. Normally, I don't really like. I honestly don't know the right way to say this. I don't like when they try to like meddle with an old thing. Well, but at the same time, it's always good to experiment with something new. But it wasn't a bad idea. That's all I'm gonna say. It wasn't a bad idea. And the things that that Elizabeth Moss's character Cecilia goes through, for starters, at first she has a job interview, and she has all her papers and everything, and in her suitcase. When she opens the suitcase, there's nothing, and 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 there was one scene where well, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but I mean, I'll keep my spoilers to a low, but there's one I would have to mention is where, I mean, she's staying in at a friend's house, and her friend's daughter thinks that she slapped her, but I mean, so they leave the house because they think that she's gone batshit insane. But I mean, she's trying to tell them, I didn't do it. He did. Of course, they're not gonna believe her because they think that she's gone crazy. But I love that the movie builds suspense. It is a really suspenseful movie. It's one of the most suspenseful films that I have seen in years, and I'm happy that because if you watch the original Invisible Man, it's a mix between horror and sci-fi with a tad bit of mix of comedy. The 2020 version of The Invisible Man, however, it's kind of more of a thriller in a way. I mean, it's a sci-fi slash thriller slash suspense film, and it is a good mix. And I'm glad that they chose to go with that mix because it makes this movie really good. If you want me to nitpick this movie, well, there is one scene in particular that kind of bugged me. It mostly involves around the end where where the antagonist is well, he does something. I don't want to talk too much about spoilers, but so I'm gonna keep my spoilers to a minimum. So we're supposed to believe that the antagonist did something, and and the protagonist does something, which I was happy. Uh, but but overall, how things turned out at first at the ending wasn't quite what I expected it to be. But at the end, however, at the same time, I was satisfied. So, yeah. Otherwise, I don't really have that much to say. I love this movie. It's it's definitely one of the year's best films, and I highly recommend seeing that. Yeah, I originally thought I was gonna hate this movie at first, but that this movie proved me wrong. Yeah. So I'm gonna give The Invisible Man an A. Yeah, that's the same grade that I gave the original movie. As for how I think this is compared to the original, it's sort of a tie for me. Yeah. I have a thing about that when I feel conflicted about like certain movies or certain performances compared to a remake or the original. So, yeah. On the side note, next video I'll be doing is a review for Bloodshot. I'll probably do a ton of more videos as well. There's 2 extra videos that I still haven't edited yet, but because I've had like a ton of shit going on in my with work and stuff going on with my family and everything. So yeah, and I'll probably have more videos to do because of the current coronavirus. I was pissed that a lot of movies have been canceled, like Milan. Well, not particularly Milan because I'm a little bit worried about how this movie will do. But we'll forget about Milan. But the biggest one, well, 2 of the biggest one that pissed me off was the biggest one at first, No Time to Die, which I was so pumped to see next month, but they got pushed back. I mean, the movie got pushed back all to wait to November. And I originally planned to review all the Daniel Craig Bond movies every Friday leading up to that movie, but I'll have to wait until October, depending on if this situation, is gotten under control and everything. Uh, so yeah. And they even pushed back the New Mutants. And I already mentioned Milan and Fast 9, which I honestly don't really care for at this point. Got pushed way. It got pushed back all the way to next year. It's ridiculous, but I understand. I mean, people want to be safe, and for plus they don't want these major blockbusters to flop at the box office because barely anybody is going to theaters anymore because of this virus that's spreading around the world. But people, please wash your hands. It is simple. Got it? Alright, good. So, I'll probably have a lot more to do on my channel really soon. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to do it because, like I said, I've been busy and everything. But, yeah. And also, as far as my gameplay videos go, for Mortal Kombat 11, I'll definitely, for sure, have some gameplay for Spawn. This is one in particular I have been looking forward to. I was pissed that I had to wait all the way to this month when they announced the release date. So, yeah. For my patience, I will be rewarded. So, yeah. A lot to look forward to do on my channel, so, yeah. And as always, thank you so much as always for watching and supporting my channel. I'm looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new movies, of course, you know where to find me.